Hi, it's Don, and this is God Stuff, conversation number 3, conversations as a pastor that I'd like to have with friends who do not share my background or worldview as we're going through the coronavirus and all of the social distancing and everything that comes from that. Just some stuff that I would love to talk about with you in person. We can't, and so we'll do it this way instead. But this is God Stuff number 3, which I am calling Sunglasses and Brick Walls. I kind of misled you on my last one. If you haven't seen them yet, please start with God Stuff number 1 and 2. Judge and Jury number 1. We talk about what is kind of the standard that we're going for when we have these conversations. Is it absolute, rigorous, scientific proof? Is it philosophical debate that ends with no skeptical, alternative possible? Or is it the courtroom in which you're the judge and jury? And then the last time we talked about running around in circles, and we talked about how so often we can have self-reinforcing views of the world, not just self-reinforcing, but self-defining views of the world that make themselves be true. And it's very hard for us to look at alternatives and really evaluate them well. That's kind of really where I'm going today before I get into where I stand and how I view things and why I view them that way. Kind of one more primer prepper session called Sunglasses and Brick Walls. First off, when we talk about religious topics or worldview topics or metaphysical topics, I meant to say metaphysical, we often think of our religion, and we think of our religion as just like one part of a pie chart, maybe, perhaps. And so when I read books by other people that are debating this kind of topic or whatever, I'll probably refer to this book a lot, The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. He's a pretty prominent atheist who gives a very well-reasoned and articulated defense of why he is an atheist. I find him to be brilliant. I don't find him to be convincing or persuasive, and we'll get to that later. But he is a brilliant guy, and he writes very well. But when I read him or other people, and when we're talking about religion, they're often thinking of religion as if it's just another slice in your life that is your pie chart. And so to change your religious practices would be like to pull out the red slice and plug in an orange one or a yellow one. Maybe to stop going to one church and go to a different one, or go to a synagogue or to a mosque, or to quit going to church, or pray a different way, or read a different book, or whatever it is that is religious practice is often viewed as a compartment in your life. And for a lot of people, that is what it is, right? You know, you've got your work life, you've got your social life, you've got your political views, you have your religious views as just one more thing. But what I'm talking about, and what a lot of people are talking about when we're talking about metaphysical topics, where did I come from? Why am I here? Is there a reason or purpose for my existence? Is there a basis for morality? What happens after I die? All of the really big $1,000 questions, I should say bazillion-dollar questions, they really don't fit the slice in the pie mentality. These ones go deeper than that. You don't get to just plug and play with these without consequences. The illustration I use for these is more like sunglasses, or a world view, as scholars would call it, or researchers or authors or whoever. A world view is something that colors how you see everything in the world, what brings interpretive value to the world, what helps you to understand it, to make sense of it, to find your place in it, your meaning in it, to make your decisions about what you will do or won't do in your life. Everything there is persuasive, it's pervasive, it's your entire worldview. And changing that is much more difficult. So like when you get up, say you're going outside, you don't have sunglasses on, you see everything around you, and you put on the sunglasses, you instantly see how they color everything that you see. I used to be cool back in the 80s. I had a rose shaded color pair of sunglasses. Yeah, you're allowed to laugh at me. That's just fine. I've had yellow sunglasses. I've had grayish sunglasses, brownish sunglasses. You've had a bunch of different types of sunglasses too. When you start changing them back and forth, you see what impact they have on how you look at the world. These glasses maybe even make an even better illustration because now that I'm older, these are prescription. So they actually sharpen my view distance-wise, which actually is really valuable. So not only do they color it, but they sharpen it for me. That's kind of what our worldview does for us. It affects the way we see everything, colors it, sharpens it, gives alternative value, what we notice, what we don't, what we value, what we don't. Imagine if you woke up in the morning and you already had your sunglasses on and you wouldn't even realize you had them on. And you went outside and everything just is what it was. And you just assumed you see the world as it really is. And you see the world the exact same as everyone else around you, when in reality, they might have different sunglasses on. And they might see a little different shade or hue. That's the impact of worldview. And when I'm talking about our beliefs and talk in the metaphysical, that's what I'm talking about, not so much of a pie chart of what your specific practices are that you could easily stop doing and replace with something else. More like, how do you understand who you are and what your place is in the world? And is there a God? And if there is a God, what consequence does that have? So that's metaphor number one, sunglasses. And because it's so pervasive, and because we often don't even realize that we're tinting what we see, it's very hard to change, especially as adults. As adults, we've grown up within a belief system. We've reinforced that belief system. We constantly reevaluate everything around us in light of that belief system, and it becomes very resilient, and we're very unwilling to want to change it. And it's very hard for us to look at the data open-mindedly. When you look at it, the scientific method, you have observation, you form hypotheses, you test your hypotheses, you develop theories, eventually you confirm them, they become facts. Eventually those will shape your worldviews, and your worldview, your sunglasses, will shape all of the choices you make and what you do in your life. Well, a lot of life isn't scientific experiment. A lot of life is just ideas that become beliefs, and beliefs that become convictions, and convictions that become our worldview, that shape all of our life and what we do. And my argument today is that eventually we run out of facts, and our convictions are based on less than philosophical proof or scientific proof, either one. That back to the judge and jury discussion. And I would be an agnostic. I'll get to that later, but I'm not. First, let's look at the alternatives to being an agnostic. And I get to humor you with my incredible artistic ability today. I'm a very, very talented guy, as some of my friends on Carrollton, who are actually painters, will laugh at what I'm doing. This is theism. Now, first, let me introduce the whole thing. Here's the brick wall. Here is us. And everything around us in the universe as we can see it, measure it, explore it, understand it. And there's this big wall between us and our metaphysical questions and the answers we would like to have. Where did I come from? Why am I here? Is there a purpose to my life? Where am I going when I die? Do I cease to exist? Is there something more, another dimension? All of those questions. And for a theistic view, it means you believe that there is a God. I put a capital G. He's a personal God. He is the one who created everything that exists. We can't see him. We can't measure him. We can't prove he's there. We can't prove it beyond any, philosophical, skeptical doubt. But that's a theistic worldview, is that there's a God, and that's why we're here, and that's why the whole universe is spinning as it is. That's the reason for matter and energy and all of that good stuff. Now, another view is called polytheism. It's not very common today, so it got my stinky orange pen that's running out of marker juice. But polytheism replaces one God with a whole bunch of different gods. Used to be very in vogue if you go back, a couple thousand years or whatever. That's what pretty much everybody on planet Earth was. And they understood the gods very much like they understood people. They loved each other, they fought with each other, they had children, they had wars, they did all of this. They created people to be their slaves. Any questions you have about the meaning of life got pushed over, and the gods just were going through the same thing. That's a polytheistic worldview. Not going to spend a lot of time on that because it's not very in vogue these days, although it's making a rebound. Everything comes back. Deism. is a lot like theism, only that this God with a capital G made everything, kind of started the ball spinning, and then he left, and he's no longer in the picture. And he doesn't watch anymore, he doesn't care anymore, he's not involved anymore. He just started it all going and walked away. All right, so that's our deistic view. Now we get into some other different ones. Those are all kind of variations of theism, so to speak. Now we get into pantheism. Pantheism sees that everything is God. And depending on your view of pantheism, it may be just only here, or it may actually go into the unknown or whatever we'll see. There can be a spiritual element to it, a divine cosmic energy or awareness or power or life force or whatever. There's lots of different religions that are pantheistic worldviews. But basically, in a pantheistic worldview, matter and energy are eternal and flow out of this life force, and that life force is God with a little g, not a personal God, not a God with a name or characteristics, but simply a life force that has always existed and always will exist and holds everything together and gives meaning, if there is meaning. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But that's kind of pantheism. Atheism is actually kind of really similar to pantheism, believe it or not. And I'm not the only one who says that. Even Richard Dawkins in The God Delusion says that. Atheism sees matter and energy equals, and I put it in quotation marks, God. In other words, there is no creator, there is no cosmic being, there is no life force. It is just simply matter and energy. And atheism has a tough thing to wrestle with. Everything does, right? Eventually we run into the wall. For a theistic worldview, I'll go back to that real quick. Whatever it is you call God, capital G, personal God, you're left with the question, where did he come from? Who made him? When did he start? And the human answer in the Bible or anywhere else is, he simply always was. He is the ultimate cause with a capital C, and that ultimate cause is God with a capital G. A personal being is the ultimate cause that created everything here. And he's the cause of all of this as an effect, but we can't say what caused him. He's not an effect. He is simply a great cause. Well, atheism has that same issue. Matter and energy simply are. They either simply came into being, which is a pretty tough sell. If you're into science, everything is cause and effect, and you're always looking at the effect and trying to calculate and quantify and determine and isolate the cause. But you never hypothesize that there's an effect that has no cause, and yet that's ultimately what it has to boil down to in an atheistic worldview, is either matter and energy always are, which is pretty much an impersonal view of pantheism, or matter and energy were caused, and whatever that cause is God. But when I read atheists today, a lot of them are using words like marvel and wonder and splendor when they look at the cosmos and the universe. They use every word they can think of except worship, which is what a theist uses. But they try to describe having the same reactions to the universe, at least Dawkins in here. He goes like, I'll read one quick quote. He says, pantheism is sexed up atheism. Deism is watered down theism. So I'm boring you with details. But I would actually slightly disagree with him. I would agree that deism is watered down theism, personal God who ran away. I would also say atheism is watered down pantheism. Pantheism has all the religious bells and trappings and tries to make it life force and personal, and atheism just says stop. But other than that, you're right. There's always been matter and energy. They always exist. Let me tell you where I would land. I would land in the camp called agnosticism. Now, gnosis is the Greek word for knowledge. A negates that word. So just like we do in English, we would say typical or atypical. They have gnosis, knowledge, or agnostic views. There is no knowledge. And you should not be surprised that I would be agnostic, because many of you would say, yes, you are without knowledge. You're a moron. And if you mean it in the sense of being a goofball or an idiot, absolutely guilty as charged. I could tell you so many stories. I've done so many stupid things. I'm open to that charge. But in the really philosophical sense, or metaphysical sense, it means we can't get through the wall. We just can't see what's on the other side. That ultimately, whether it's atheism or polytheism or theism or deism, I can't know. I can't find out. I can't see through it. I can't devise tests that get around it. I have no way of really properly understanding whether this is all there is and whether this started somehow or whether this is all there ever was and it always existed or whether there's a God over here that created all of this. I can't find out. That's the agnostic worldview. That's where I would be, and I'm not. And I would love to tell you why. So that's what we're going to come up with soon. Hey, I hope you're hunkering down. I hope you're keeping other people far away, stiff-arming. These are weird things to say, but may you be blessed with isolation and a degree of loneliness physically while being connected with people electronically or whatever, and may you be safe. And I'll look forward to talking to you with God Stuff number 4, hopefully relatively soon.